So welcome everyone. Welcome to this session. So the session title is the Dr. Flow Power Platform BPM Toolkit Integration in Teams, O and Y. So indeed, I'm Dr. Flow, and I'm a business application and Power Platform MVP, and I'm based in Brussels. That's all you need to do about me. Well, as you know, the Power Platform targets a wide audience of people, from citizen developer to professional developers, and there are many people in between, like IT pro. So all these people can potentially create an application. And what is very interesting is that the different audience can use this tool, and without being frustrated or not too much frustrated. Like professional developer, and I'm a professional developer, are not frustrated by using Power Platform. They can do almost whatever they want, right? Because if they want, they can rely on Azure, etc. So this session is about illustrating a mission-critical enterprise application that I did create, and also why and how I integrate that in Teams. Of course, it's a work in progress. So before starting any project with any technology, you need to make sure you understand the limitation. Every platform has limitation. And in the Power Platform, and more specifically in Power Automate, we all know that a flow duration is 30 days. So after 30 days, your flow stops running. And that's the reason why I did, one of the reasons why I did create the BPM Toolkit. Also, flow approval duration are limited to 30 days. There are workarounds on this. My workaround is the BPM Toolkit. Yeah, but by the way, I'm talking about the BPM Toolkit. This is an open source tool, so you can download that for free. So this is obviously not a commercial presentation, right? So you can take the source code, you can analyze the code, and you can learn from that if you want, or you can use it in production. So let's get back to the slide. So there's no state machine. So state machine is something very, very important in workflow. State machine means that in your workflow, you must be able to go forward, backward, from one stage to another stage, etc. So this is important. Huh? We don't have that in Power Automate. It's always sequential. I did propose some patterns 3 years ago to implement a state machine in Power Automate, but it was kind of limited. So now I use the BPM Toolkit. Application lifecycle management story in the Power Platform is still kind of weak, right? So there is something, but it's not what it should be. It's still too complicated to use. There are improvements, especially with SharePoint. So if you use the connection references, environment variable, now you can easily deploy a SharePoint workflow or Power Apps application, Canva application, from one environment linked to one SharePoint site to another one. So now it's possible. That's recent, right? Because the environment variable can be linked to the data source. Also, very important in mission critical application, which is a workflow or a business process. Well, at least in Power Automate, when Power Automate stops at some point for any reason, a technical reason, a flow is suspended or whatever, you cannot restart from where the flow stopped. You have to restart from the beginning. So if you have a complex business process with 10 actors in the pipeline, these people have to approve something. And after 5 actors, 5 approval, for instance, your flow is stuck somewhere. Today, you need to restart from the beginning, which frustrates all these actors, right? So with the BPM Toolkit, you can restart from where you want. Something very important if you want to put application in production, including team application, is the API call limitation. In a nutshell, that means that a flow has a limited number of actions that it can call, depending on the license. So in Office 365 license, you can make 2,000 calls per 24 hours per account. You can buy additional call if you want, without having to buy premium features, premium licenses. So there are some analytics that illustrate the number of API calls that your flow does. No custom task form. If you ask someone to approve with Power Automate, you get an approval form, right? Recently you can change that by using adaptive cards, but it's kind of limited. What we want is to have an approval form written with Power Apps where you can bring any enterprise data in this form. So, and that's possible with the BPM Toolkit. Also very important, when you have a complex business process, you don't have any task delegation. So if someone is supposed to react to an approval and does not react because he's in holidays or is lazy or whatever, is sick, then the whole pipeline is stuck. So people must be able to delegate their tasks to someone else, or officers following the business process should be able to skip some steps in the workflow. Okay, and that's natively part of the BPM Toolkit. So let's start from a case study. One of my customers came to me and they wanted to re-implement their HR business process. They have 60 type of HR requests. One HR request could be, I want to be pre-pension, or I want to work part-time, thing like this. Of course, this has to go through a complex approval pipeline, not just one person, many person, because there is could have a huge impact on operation, for instance. And there are 40 type of workflows, business process. And today they use paper and also a Oracle PeopleSoft application. The whole approval process can take 1 year. So we are far beyond the 30 days limitation of Power Automate. People, so actors want to see what's the next step, what are the previous steps. They want to have a dashboard of all the business process. They want KPI, they want to be able to search to the business process. So that's something we don't have in Power Automate. So they did the first proof of concept with ServiceNow. It failed. They did a second proof of concept with Nintex. It failed. They asked Microsoft Consulting Service to start a proof of concept with the Power Platform. It failed due to the limitation that I mentioned before. And then that's the reason why I did implement the BPM Toolkit, that I made generic, open source, so you can apply that to almost any issue, any problem. So this slide quickly illustrates an example of an HR request. There are many steps. So someone wants to make a leave request for medical reason. So an employee in Paris wants to make a leave request. It will be validated by a doctor, legal department, line manager, first line in HR in Paris, supervisor in Paris, Brussels director. And sometime we need to be able to get back to the previous steps. We should be able to request additional information from the employee, thing like this. So it's complex, and that's the reason why all the experimented before failed, right? It's complicated. And moreover, there is a security issue because this information is extremely sensitive. So only people in the pipeline can see the information, right? So it's not shared across a team, right? So some people can see, only some people can see the information. People should be able to submit information as a draft. They should be able to edit it and then to submit that to the approval. For the business, it's normal. I mean, this does not look very complicated, but implementing that was complex. So that's why I did implement the BPM Toolkit, and I will show you later the link with Teams, of course, because this is a team event. And so this is 100% written with the Power Platform, right? So I could have used .NET or Node.js or whatever. You will see that using the Power Platform was probably the best choice. It made my life easier. It's free, open source. You can take the code, you can reuse it, you can install it. You don't have to buy any license. Business can create workflows. So business can change the workflow. They don't have to write code. I will illustrate that. It's natively state machine. The workflow can change at runtime. There's no workflow duration limit. There's no 30 days. An approval can take several years if needed. So basically, I'm not using the out-of-the-box approval of Power Automate. I'm using my own custom approval that scale better. Native task delegation, custom task form. If you have a security matrix, you can apply this security matrix to the business process. It's visual. There is an integration with robotic process. The first time I showed this application to the Power Automate team, the first thing they asked was, hey, could you make a link with RPA? So yes, answer is yes. And you don't need to buy a premium license, at least for the SharePoint version. There is a SharePoint version, there is a Dataverse version, and there is a Dataverse for Team version. You might have to buy additional API add-ons, however. This is the pattern which is behind the BPM Toolkit. I call that the case management pattern. Basically, you create your request. Best choice, in my opinion, is using Power Apps. You have a request list, so each type of request has a dedicated list or table if you use Dataverse. Each request goes to a case list or case table in the BPM Toolkit. And for each case that is created, we have a module. So I did create a module that I call the workflow generator that generates steps in a table or in a list called case lifecycle. So a case can be split in step 1, step 2, step 3 in case lifecycle. Of course, the system will read the workflow, so the workflow definition somewhere that I will illustrate, and generate the steps in the table. And then we have a Power Apps that can read the table. New request, new case, steps generated. Request, case, steps generated based on the workflow definition. And the business can change the workflow definition. This illustrates a part of the data structure of this BPM Toolkit. You create your own custom table for your own custom request, and they will be handled by the BPM Toolkit. So request become a case, and case goes to case lifecycle. Right, so demonstration. I will demonstrate the version which is almost in production, which is a SharePoint version, and then we'll go to the team version. So basically, this is an intranet with three pictures. Workflow command center, that's only for the officers, HR officers in this case. Your dashboard, that's where you will see all the tasks, your tasks, so any employee can get there. And this is an example of HR request. So an employee goes there, click here, and start a part-time request, so HR request. I will go very quickly through this application because there's nothing interesting for you here. So it's a wizard, go from one screen to another screen, fill in information about the part-time, okay, right. Then we have a final screen. The employee can save as a draft and edit that later on, or submit that to workflow. Submit to workflow, acknowledgement about the ruling, and then, if needed, the employee can add additional users in the pipeline. But of course, a predefined workflow has been defined, associated with the form. So other approvers will be in the pipeline, of course. So form is submitted. What's next? So the employee did submit his form. What's next? Next, HR officers will go to the workflow command center, and they click there, and they will see every request here. So for each request, there's been a process. So they have a visual way to see the process. Okay, you can see that this process, so this is the one the employee did submit, is here. So it is running. If HR click here, it will get more information about the request. So the form will be visible in view mode. You see that the system is waiting for this step. This is orange. We have KPI, so we can filter the whole dashboard. We can search through every process. So there is a search engine. You see, if we scroll down below, you can see that we have other processes. For instance, this one, well, this team, because approver could be team. Well, when I say team, it's groups or individual. So this was a group. So this group say, okay, then the system went there. This is a person, he say no, it's red, and then the system went to the next step here. So the workflow is waiting here. Here we can see for this process here, we have a red star, meaning that originally the approver was another person, but this person did put a delegation. So it has been redirected to this one. So now let's say the HR take this case, work on this case. So the system is waiting here. We have a lot of tools here that HR can use. And what HR can do, because the current user is member of this group, this team, HR can be split in different teams. And since he's member of this team, well, this group, because team has is a Microsoft meaning, of course. I will use the term group. It can approve, for instance. So it approve this one, okay, and then can put a comment, and then the system goes to the next step. So the next step is this one, and this one is green. So any comment here can be retrieved. We see the comment. We can put attachment if needed, right? So the system is waiting for this person to approve. So this is not a group, this is a person, probably a manager. Also, just for information, we have, so I did put the concept of locking. So when HR, you work on some process, it can lock the process, okay? Well, sorry about this, my phone is running. And it can lock the process, so anyone else cannot use the process. So we have locking and unlocking. That's very important. So let's get back here. Also, when HR take a process, you can see here that there is a team icon. Team icon means that if they want, they can have a discussion channel here. So they will click here, and they can go to the discussion channel. So for each type of request, the system automatically create a private channel, because confidentiality is very important here, right? So there is a private channel that look like this. So this is for this type of request. So they got this. So they can click here, and they can view the request, and they can start a conversation if they want. So if you remember, a manager was asked to approve. So the manager will get a notification. He will click on the notification, or he can go to the dashboard, my dashboard. And here, manager, so if it's a manager, he will see the request. If it's the employee can see every request that he did submit previously. Like these are all the requests that this employee did submit. And the employee can see where the requests are waiting. So I see that this request is waiting for this guy to do something. So the employee can still stop the business process. So you can click here, and then the business process, the whole business process will be stopped. If the employee is a manager, and if the employee gets an approval, the employee will get this. There is another panel in the same application where the employee can approve or reject. You see, and also see the comments of the previous approvers. So I can see the comment of the previous approver here. Also, in this application, people can also add delegation. So here I'm adding a delegation. So I'm delegating my task to this person from this date to that date. And the BPM Toolkit will take that into account and will redirect the request to the correct person. And if the delegation expired, then it will redirect the task to the original requester. Now, let's say this manager did reject the task. Oh, no, he confirmed the task. Great. Okay. Then you can see the workflow was waiting here. Now it's green, and it goes to the next step. I'm HR. I will take this. I will work on it. So I see that the workflow is waiting here. This guy, this is a person, not a role. This person does not react. I can skip it. It did not react. It did not put any delegation. I can skip this step. Up, and it goes there. State machine. Also, I can, if I want, I'm HR, I can say, I want to redirect this to this step 3 to step 0. So you just click on the button and specify the destination here, step 0, and the system will go there. Again, that's the state machine. Also, you can say this. If, so in the workflow definition, you can say this. If this role reject, I want all this step to be skipped, and I want to go there. If you define that in the workflow, and I will show you how to do that. So if this role, this group of people say no, then it's red. You get the comment here, and the system goes there. You see? How can you define the workflow? The workflow is defined in a SharePoint list. The business can change this. Example, I have 3 workflows here. Let's take this one. In the workflow, you can define the steps, step 0, 1, 2, 3. You can define the role, so group of people who are supposed to handle this step. You can put placeholders. So placeholder means here that if the user submitting the workflow add additional people, all these additional people will be put here, inserted here. It's kind of a placeholder. There are different verbs. Here you see we have feedback. There are other verbs like stop, like approval, like approval stop. Approval stop means if this actor say yes, it's stopped. The whole process is approved. Okay, so we have approval, approval stop, etc. To make a go-to, you can just do this. If status equal negative, go there. So this is this. So basically, the business can create this workflow and the business can change the workflow if needed. Okay, so let's get back here. The HR take a process, and if you want, the HR actor can insert a new step. I want to add a new step into this pipeline. So between this and this, I want to assign the step to this person, and you can see up, the step shows up. All the step number have been renumbered accordingly. So that works. It's dynamic. Now, let's say you have a complex permission matrix, like you have employee in Brussels, employee in Maastricht, employee in Paris, employee in Luxembourg. We have different HR. For the work time and leave, we have HR Brussels, HR Maastricht, HR Paris. The HR Brussels can read-write information submitted by employee in Paris and also by employee in Luxembourg. Maastricht can only read-write information from employee Maastricht, and Paris only read-write information from Paris. This is an example of permission matrix for one type of request, work time and leave. You may have different type of requests with different security logic, right? So, and the BPM toolkit understands the concept of permission matrix. If you don't have any permission matrix, it's fine. I mean, it will work. Everybody will be able to do everything. But that's important. Also, I don't have the time to illustrate the demo of RPA, but if you get to this YouTube, you will see it. So basically, we have a BPM toolkit workflow running in the cloud, of course. And at some point, one of the steps is call a legacy application. So you will see that the BPM toolkit will start a legacy application on a specific desktop. It will fill in information coming from the cloud in this legacy application. It will store this legacy application, and it will go to the next step. So RPA integration is absolutely possible, and not just with Power Automate Desktop, any RPA tool. So technically, I did implement that on top of SharePoint and CDS, so Dataverse, and now, of course, Dataverse for Team. At that time, it was not free, so it was a good news. I've used Power Automate. Initially, I could have used Logic Apps, but eventually I use Power Automate, which is absolutely fine. There are core modules in the BPM toolkit. The many modules, like Case Launcher. I did create a workflow engine, fully written with Power Automate, by the way. We have a workflow generator, workflow optimizer. Well, what's the role of workflow optimizer? Well, if you have twice the same person in a workflow, in subsequent steps, I mean, the system can say, oh, I will merge this. It's only one actor, right? So thing like this, we have task manager, task delegation, security module. So all of these things are part of the core modules. And on top of that, you have UI, so basically Power Apps application that show you the dashboard, the business process dashboard, thing like this. And the UI call proxy flows, and proxy flow call backend flow. And by doing this, you can have elevation of privilege. So UI, basically Power Apps call a flow. That means this flow is called with the user identity. But since this flows here called the backend flow, only the system account is used for the backend flow. So you get elevation of privilege. So it's 100% written with the Power Platform. One of the benefits is that it's security and management. Because when you use the Power Platform, So instead of using Azure Function in .NET or Node.js or whatever, is that the Power Platform provides a lot of management tools like analytics, but also data loss prevention tool. So you can log or specify some specific setting, fine-grained settings in the connectors that you want to use, right? So, and also the Center of Excellence provide a lot of benefit in terms of management, in terms of compliance, for instance. So that's one of the reasons why I've used the Power Platform, not because I was a fanboy of the Power Platform, and yes, I am, but the reason was in terms of management, it's easier, in terms of security, it's easier to use an integrated Power Platform application, right? And also, actually, it was easier to create also, not just for management. So you can see that this is the Dataverse version of the BPM Toolkit. We have different solutions, one for data layer, that's for the Dataverse. We have the core solution, UI solution, demo solution. Well, demo, that's just for the developer guide, ALM solution. And there are something like, well, originally there were 71 flows. Now there are 94 flows. There've been some kind of refactoring. 3 Power Apps canvas. Okay, they are all here. And the version, well, of course, the most mature version is the BPM Toolkit for SharePoint, but there is a BPM Toolkit for Dataverse, which is in alpha, and BPM Toolkit for Teams, of course. So I start with SharePoint, and then I implement the Dataverse, the BPM Toolkit for Dataverse, and then the great news was, well, we can do things in Teams. I mean, so then I migrate that to Teams. So this is actually the master code of Dataverse for Teams. It's the BPM Toolkit for Dataverse. And the storage engine, the storage is, of course, for SharePoint, it's secure SharePoint list. So I use unique permission, right? So because when you put people in an approval pipeline, only these people can have access to the request. So it's unique permission all the time, which works very nice with SharePoint. Same for Dataverse Pay. It's more complex for Dataverse for Team because you don't have unique permission, so row level permission. Well, actually, it's very limited in Dataverse for Team. So that's something I'm still working on, but still, I mean, I'm quite optimistic about that. So this SharePoint is public preview. You can get to GitHub and you can download it. I will put the reference later on. This is alpha. This is alpha as well. So this illustrates the team version of the BPM Toolkit. We still have 12 minutes. That's fine. I mean, so this is the team version. Let me show you the code, right? So this is the team version. Let's go here to the cloud flows. Okay, so here are my flows. Of course, the Dataverse table and the apps here. You see? And yes, you can see the dashboard from, I need to refresh that because when you go to the team app, it's a bit slow. So you can see the workflow center running in team here. So, I mean, but in my opinion, by default, any Power Platform application should start from a team application, right? Even though people don't use it from team because you can create a team application and share it to your colleagues, right? They don't have to be part of the team. I think that's very powerful. That's a very good news. And that's why I believe that most people using the BPM Toolkit will start using the one with Dataverse. Well, they will start using the one with SharePoint because it's more mature. But then later on, they will move to the Dataverse for Teams. And if they want later on, they can upgrade to the pure Dataverse. But having Dataverse for Teams is really a bargain. Yes, so the core module are the following, and the logic is the following. When someone submits a case, a request, for instance, by using Power Apps, you can use any other technology, but Power Apps is probably the best way to create your own request. In the BPM Toolkit, there is a module called the Workflow Launcher. So the workflow analyzes the workflow definition associated with the case, and generate steps. So we have another module called the step generator. And then this trigger the workflow runtime. So the workflow runtime is the workflow engine. Again, this workflow engine is 100% written with Power Automate. I'm not using the Power Automate out of the box approval. So I use Power Automate as a kind of Azure function if you want. But that's very, very powerful. It was way faster to use Power Automate to create this code than using or writing .NET function, honestly. We still have a few minutes, so I will show you some part of the code because I think you might be interested into that. I will show you the non-team version, but let me show you, yeah. Example, create case. I mean, using Power, this is based on Power Automate. Does it open? Yeah, look, this is the code for creating a case. So as you can see, all the code looks the same. So I have a try block, I have a catch block. So there is a centralized error handling, you see. So I call child workflow, you see. But doing that with Power Automate was easier than writing .NET code. I'm a .NET developer as well, but honestly, this was way faster. I have a centralized error handling, try, catch. In every flow, I have that. And if there is any error, I send the error information to a child flow, you see, this. And then I have a monitoring tool here. Because this monitoring tool is part of the BPM Toolkit. So this monitoring tool checks every hour that all the workflows, all the flows are up and running, because you never know in production, a workflow could be suspended. Anything can happen. So it checked that every hour. It showed the status of all the service. And if one flow fails or is suspended, the system tried to restart it twice. Okay. So actually, the BPM Toolkit is self-healing, right? And self-monitoring. So example here, at that time, for this business request, because we can trace the business request, so we can see the impact of an error on the business, this flow failed. So we can see that here in this monitoring tool. So by the way, the name of this monitoring tool is Pulse. So that means here, as a support, I can click on this link and I can go directly to the code. I can see exactly what went wrong. So look here, this is my instance, the flow instance. So if I scroll down, I can get there. You see, there was an error in the try somewhere, and it was here. No, here. See, it was an issue with the group, the SharePoint group definition. The group name was not the correct one. So, and also, just to illustrate that actually using Power Automate can be easier than using .NET code. I will zoom a little bit here. You see, this is my code for, well, it's a bit too small, huh, right? So yes, it's too small. So this is my code. And you can see that I run code in parallel. So in parallel, I secure my case lifecycle, I secure the workflow, I secure the request, I secure the case, you see? And all these actions run in parallel. Well, that's easy. I mean, doing that is very easy. Doing the same thing in .NET was more complex. You see? Calling SharePoint, making a loop, retrieving information is easier by using Power Automate than writing .NET code. And it's extremely fast. Okay, so I mean, if I had to do that again, I would choose the same tool. Again, not because I'm a fanboy, because it's more efficient. So we've illustrated that before. If you want to use this tool, you can get there to GitHub, this link here. At the moment, the version which is there is still the SharePoint version because it's the more mature version, but I will put the Dataverse and Dataverse for Team version in the coming weeks. You can download the code, of course. You have a setup guide here. You can download the you can follow the setup guide step by step. There is also a video that illustrates how to install the BPM Toolkit. Its installation is a bit too complex. It can take several hours, but anyway, that's life. And you have a developer guide here that shows you how to create your own custom request compatible with the BPM Toolkit, because you need some specific fields, so there are some constraints, and how to create your own workflow, how to configure your request. Voilà. Okay, so I think we still have 5 minutes. I hope that you enjoyed this session. And of course, the future of the BPM Toolkit is team. I mean, team, right? If you want more information about this, you can take a look at this video. Video 1 gives you an overview of all the features of the BPM Toolkit. And video 2 is a bit more technical. I illustrate the architecture. So I did that video with John Levesque. And well, thank you for attending my session.